Hi, it's your girl, Dani Parks. Listen, if you are having any type of suicidal thoughts, if you're having any type of mental health crisis, I want you to dial the new suicide hotline 988. That's right. It's only three numbers and it's 988. You can call this or text it to be connected to a crisis counselor where they can help you through your situation in that moment. Once again, that number is 988, and that's it. All right, I'll see y'all later.
Esme, she's a queen. This is dedicated to all my beautiful queens, all my beautiful ladies out there. She's a queen. Go queen. You got it, girl. She's a queen. You better represent. Go queen. Go queen. Go. She's a queen about her business. Queen. Working hard on a mission.
So thank you all for joining another episode of the Key Chat. Today, my very special guest is Ms. Danielle Parks, and Danielle is a mental health advocate. And Dani, she talks about a subject that is really close to my heart, mental health in our community. And she's on a great mission to help everyone and to erase some stigmas and to just educate us on a very important topic that affects our community so much. So how are you doing today, Dani?
Hi, Sharonda. I am fine. Thank you for having me on your platform and on this amazing show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to speak with you. I know we have been trying to connect for quite some time. So I want you to tell everyone just what motivated you to decide to have such a huge platform and being so transparent, because I know like you speak at different arenas, you do workshops, you've really taken your mission to a big, large scale. So what inspired you to do that?
Well, what inspired me initially, I reached out for help as far as my mental health condition when I was in the military. And just going through that process, the moment I said, hey, I need help, I'm depressed, I'm suicidal, the first thing that they wanted to do was put me out in the military. They wanted to discharge me. And I mean, I'm not against, getting out of there early, but my concern was, okay, but I still need help. If y'all put me out now, when will I get that help? And so I kind of talked myself into my treatment plan. And while I was there, I became a liaison for my unit, my brigade. And I just made it my mission at that point to go up to the psych ward and talk to those soldiers about their options. Let them know, hey, you have to advocate for yourself. You have to fight for your career, because if you don't, this is what will happen. If you want this to happen, then, do you. But if you really need the help that you are asking for, you're going to have to fight for that. Of course, when it comes to mental health, everything has changed. People are more open to helping you, but back then it was like, listen, I need help. You had to fight for it. So that's how I started in mental health advocacy.
That's wonderful. And with your personal experience, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions? I know like suicide and suicide ideation is something that I think a lot of people, they don't discuss enough of. Suicide, number one, is still something that is happening at very high rates, especially within our community. And I think that some people don't realize also just suicide ideation, just having that feeling of hopelessness, thinking, well, what would happen if I was no longer here, just being tired. What was your personal experience with that? Because I know you did touch on it in your previous answer. So what has been your experience with personal depression, suicide, suicidal thoughts? Like, how has that been dealing with that?
It's a struggle. It really is. Right now, I'm good, but back then, like my young adult years, suicide was like the main thing on my mind. I could be at work having a wonderful day, but during the entire time I could be laughing and joking with you, just like I'm goofy. And so even though I was like this on the outside, on the inside, I was just like, okay, what am I going to do today? How can I end my life today for real this time? And those were my main thoughts when I would get back to my barracks. I would see what was around, what could I use, what could I do. And someone who is suicidal, there's a lot of signs that we can look for when it comes to that, but there's also those people who are very silent. They don't reveal their plans to no one because they don't want anyone to stop them. With the depression coupled with the suicide attempts and thoughts, I just got comfortable with it. It was it would be nothing for me to go into my room and take like a whole bunch of pills, hoping that, you know, this is it, or, swallow something that was poisonous, maybe drink too much, hoping that this will really do it, drive too fast. I mean, all of this stuff. And it was just normal for me. It was like, just like waking up and writing your name, or I mean, it was just like a normal part of my life.
Mm. Did you have anyone that you felt that you were comfortable speaking with? And I think that's one of the main things that make it really hard when people are dealing with depression and mental illness. Like you said, sometimes you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to. Sometimes people don't want to talk to anyone. But what was your experience as far as having help, or did you have, other than the military, did you feel like you had anyone you could confide in, that you could reach out to?
I had about one or two people I could confide in. I've never had an issue, you know, being transparent about what I was going through, but at the same time, I just didn't want no one helping, because I really wanted this to happen. However, God has a plan for me. He had his hand on me the entire time, but like I said, I was comfortable with it back then. This is what I wanted to do. My friends who knew that I was depressed, or I wasn't myself, I was out of character, they would reach out to me, they would point it out to me. And, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. Or, yeah, I'm not feeling too well today. This and that happened. But for the most part, I would never say, can you help me? I need help, until it got to the point where I decided that I wanted help and I wanted to change my life. So that's when I actually reached out, said, hey, I need help.
Are you ready to join the new workforce solution? Currently, many people are working from home. Right now, during the pandemic and also the recession, many Americans are finding flexible ways to earn a living and support their family on their terms. Many name brand companies utilize customer service in order to thrive. Little did you know that a lot of those agents are sitting at home, just like you. Contact FlexPro today and learn more on how you can make money, earn a living, have flexibility, more time with your family on your own terms.
Say, hey, I need help.
Now, one other thing that I found out about you just doing my research is that you said you had an incorrect treatment of your mental illness for about a decade.
Yes, and that was a surprise to me. When I was in the military, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. So clinical depression, you have suicidal thoughts, low self-esteem, you isolate yourself a lot. And when I got out the military, literally a year after I got in the military, I was still having some issues. And the psychologist that I've seen at that point from the VA, she diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. She didn't tell me I had bipolar disorder. When I was going through all my records, I could see that she did prescribe me a mood stabilizer. However, she never told me I had this medication. She didn't tell me about the diagnosis. And one thing about medical records, your doctors have like this cheat sheet. So if you go to your doctor for an appointment, they just look at that first sheet and it has everything that you've ever complained about or been diagnosed with. Unfortunately, that diagnosis was never on that cheat sheet. So this entire time, I've been being treated for depression with antidepressant. And from what the psychiatrist told me, an antidepressant actually triggers mania in people who are bipolar. So for 10 years, I've been doing so many good things. I've been in the community, I've been volunteering, I've been having, making sure I'm promoting my nonprofits. But at the same time, I was just going in circles with my emotion. I couldn't understand what was going on. One minute, I'm okay. The next minute, I'm super irritated. I don't want to talk to nobody. I'm angry, easily frustrated. And it was like this continuous circle for the last 10 years until I started to have suicidal thoughts. I never had suicidal thoughts since the time I was treated for it initially, back in 2004. So recently, about last year sometime, I started to have suicidal thoughts. And I was just like, okay, I need to get my medicine fixed because this is definitely gone too far as what my thoughts are. Went to the doctor. I did a walk-in. Thank God the psychiatrist was there who actually took time to look through my record. And I was telling her everything I was going through. And she says, oh yeah, that's because you're bipolar. And I'm like,
Wow.
I was like, no, I'm just depressed with anxiety. She was like, no, you're bipolar. And it seems like you've been cycling really quick. So here's a mood stabilizer. And since then, I mean, everything has been good. I haven't had this feeling of going in circles with my emotions. My mood is stabilized, to say the least. And I can operate better. I can think clearer versus struggling, struggling to get these things out, these ideas, be creative like I am.
And for those who may not be familiar, can you tell us more like exactly what bipolar disorder is?
So bipolar disorder, there's two. You have bipolar I, which is more on I would say the mania side. So with that, you're easily frustrated, probably easily angered. For me, I isolated myself because I just didn't want to put that out, especially being a single mom and I have a daughter here. I didn't want to lash out on her. You have insomnia a lot. Super busy. You like to be busy because your mind is going, you're talking super fast, you're jumping from one thought to the other because you can't focus. And then you may have a time where you just feel like, oh wow, life is great. I'm amazing. And then the next minute you're up again. Bipolar 2 is more on the depressive side. So you're feeling good, but then your depression gets super, super low and you can be there for months at a time, like don't want to do anything. You're in the bed. And it's a really dark place from what I've heard from other people who actually have bipolar 2. But with bipolar 1, which I have, it's, I was always up there. It was a struggle to do a lot of things because I was so irritated inside, whether I was speaking, whether I was teaching. It was just like, okay, Dani, how you're feeling isn't reasonable. So get through this and go home, basically. So that's what I would do.
Wow. And I definitely, like I said, I commend you just for being transparent and just for making what you've experienced something that you can share with others, because I still feel that there's a huge stigma behind mental health. You know, as you and I discussed prior to recording, the conversation definitely is growing where people are more comfortable talking about different trials and tribulations that they may have dealt with depression, you know, and mental illness and therapy. But the conversation, of course, there's obviously more room still for growth because there are some stigmas that are still involved. What do you think, just in your personal experience, have been some of the biggest misconceptions just about dealing with mental health and, like you said, bipolar disorder? Like, there's a new trend now, like when someone just does anything, oh, so and so's bipolar. It, to me, is just so abusive, play with stuff like that, and I don't find any humor in that. So, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions just about mental illness as a whole?
Yeah, so especially with bipolar disorder, because when you hear someone has it, and I have to say, I was one of those people as well. Like, oh wow, they crazy, crazy,
Oh,
and it's like, okay, let me just step back from that person. Even when it took me a minute when the doctor told me that I had bipolar disorder. Oh my goodness, I cried and I cried because I cried, I was relieved because now everything makes sense. But at the same time, I was just like, oh, you know what? I don't know anything about this. How is this going to affect me? How is this going to affect my parenting? I don't know if I could tell people because they're going to look at me weird. Even the friends that I did tell who I trust, and now, I tell everybody. But that initial, revealing it to my close friends, my parents, it was like, there was like a moment of silence, like, hey, girl, I got something to tell you. The doctor told me I was bipolar. And then there's like this silence, like, oh, okay, or how you doing? And it's just one of those things where people just really think that you're really out there. There's been a lot of people who reached out to me. You just don't know how prominent bipolar disorder is, especially with single moms. I've had so many single moms reach out to me about them actually being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. They don't know what to do. And it's one, like I said, it's a conversation where there is a lot of stigma around it, not just around bipolar disorder, but around any type of mental health illness. Um, and also mentally development, mental development issues too. You think, this person can comprehend what I'm saying. Maybe they're liable to do something out the box and hurt themselves or hurt me. There's a lot of stigma on all of that. So it's just we have to continue the conversation. We have to keep bringing it up and going more in depth with. More in depth with.
definitely, because I know I personally deal with anxiety, PTSD from the past, and as a single parent, you're right. You
Mhm.
already have enough stress as it
Right.
is being the sole provider, and then when you have to deal with trying to be upbeat and happy and not be sad, it's just like it's
Right.
kind of it's like a huge war in itself. And what do you also feel? Because I know like just a lot of things that I've learned just trying to deal with my anxiety and depression, just other things, just like vitamin D, being outside in the sunlight, getting proper rest, trying to be stressed also can help you, feel better. Are there any other things that you have found out in your experience? Just things like, getting more sunlight, maybe getting more rest, or have there been any tips like that with self care that you found that has helped you?
Oh yeah, and I just want to go back to what you said about anxiety and feeling sad. I always say, like, you have to accept your feelings, and if you're not feeling well, if you're like, okay, I already know, I'm already, frustrated, or I'm having that angst inside, I don't want to be around people. I always say embrace it, acknowledge it, and then let yourself, go through it at home, and try to find some things that help you through that. So, like you, I know you do a lot of public appearances, you have your show, and sometimes you may feel like, you know what, I feel like canceling this today because I am just not feeling it. So it's like one of those things like, okay, what can you do to help decrease whatever you're feeling so that you can continue on with, being great. And one of the things that I found was mindfulness. There is no way that I could have got through those last 10 years without being mindful of my words, being mindful of my thoughts, especially my thoughts, because those can translate into your behavior. So being mindful, talking to yourself. I talk to myself all the time. And so it's like, okay, Dani, like I said, Dani, this isn't reasonable. Why are you feeling like this? That person can breathe however they want to breathe. Sometimes we get, annoyed, like, oh Lord, they breathing too loud. Like, what's really going on? It's like, let that person live. Can they breathe? Is this reasonable? Is this a reasonable thought to have right now? And so things like that, being mindful. A lot of people with a mental health condition, exercising helps to manage whatever emotions or behaviors that you're having. You have to have some type of outlet. So exercising, you can go skating, you can go walking, whatever makes you feel good, so you can get those endorphins going, just to help you get through even just the hours, if that's what it takes for you. Eating right, there's things that I notice that I can't eat because it can trigger some of the symptoms for bipolar disorder. And let me just put this out here, just because you're on a medication, sometimes you still will have those symptoms. So some things that I should not be doing is drinking any type of alcohol, having any type of caffeine, and then also a lot of sugar. Now, I have to say, I love all those three things, especially the sugar part. I am a cookie person. But I can't do it all the time because I know this is going to trigger one of those symptoms. And I'm not sure which one it's going to trigger, but just to be on the safe side, let me just either cut it out or try to decrease it. And since I found out I had bipolar disorder, I actually decreased. I used to get coffee every morning, like Dunkin' Donuts is my jam. I was there every single day, but I can't do it because I need to make sure I'm mentally well to continue in my purpose, well to parent my daughter and be attentive and active in her life. So there are just things you can't do. Even something small as I read salmon. I love salmon, but that could be a trigger as well. So I have to kind of decrease things. I eat salmon all the time. And so I was like, oh, well, let me just, fall back on that a little bit and it's like little things that can trigger you. So it's good to do your research. Whenever the doctor diagnose you with anything, it's good to do research about it.
Wow, I didn't know that about fish. And you brought up another important point. And you're right, in my personal experience, because sometimes, like obviously with our platforms, you put a lot on your plate sometimes, but you're also trying to take care of yourself. And one thing I had to learn in particular, personally, was to be okay with saying no. And like you said, canceling sometimes, even if it's at the last minute, and being unapologetic, like not feeling any guilt involved, because that's one thing I had to do for my own personal mental health. Like, okay, I'm overwhelmed today. I can't do it. And either you accept it or you don't. Either way, it's not going to bother me because I have to put my mental health, my feelings first. I know personally too, I really had to be mindful of certain relationships in my life that were really draining me, like physically and mentally. I had to either cut off certain individuals or really distance my interactions because it would really agitate me. Like there's literally people in my life when it triggers my anxiety, like literally just the conversations, the tone and how they speak. And I was like, I gotta push back, because I have to put my feelings first. And I just think that's something too that single mothers, women of color, so many people who are dealing with anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, just so many, layers of mental health that there are the certain decisions that we have to make as well with self-love, with putting ourselves first, that really will make a huge difference. I'm not saying it's the solution, obviously, to your mental health, but just doing something that you may think is super minor, just saying, hey, I'm not going to talk to a particular individual right now, or I'm just going to scale back from social media, doing all this scrolling. Hey, I'm not going to this particular program for a while. There's so many other factors too that we can do, or getting that extra hour of sleep, or maybe I'm sleeping too much because I really am dealing with some depression and I don't want to get out of bed. Maybe I'll make an effort to maybe stay up an extra hour or two and do something that, like you said, lifts your endorphins. There's a lot of things that sometimes we have to sit back and consider and think, well, maybe if I cut off certain consumptions, whether it is food, activities, conversations, people, and seeing, what a difference it can make. What a difference it can make. So another thing I want to bring up is something that means a lot to me is therapy. So again, as we said, with mental illness and mental health in our community, there's stigmas involved with that. I am happy now that I feel like more people of color are talking about therapy. Again, I think the conversation can be bigger, but we have made some strides. What's your opinion on therapy? Have you engaged in therapy? What are your thoughts with it?
Yes, I love therapy. I highly recommend it. I actually recommend if your doctor puts you on it, medication therapy as well as talk therapy. As far as talk therapy is concerned, I love it. I encourage it because it helps you to just walk through your thoughts. And sometimes we need someone to help us walk through our thoughts and also walk us to a solution or something to help us manage whatever is going on internally. I started therapy when I was in the military. And at first I was kind of like, I don't know this person. I'm not going to be telling them all my business. But with therapy, you have to be you have to be transparent because you're there to get help. And like they say, you can't heal what you don't reveal. So if you're there because you want to heal from something specifically, then you have to be transparent about it. Even with me, when I was going around speaking about suicide and depression, I wasn't telling the whole story because I was just like, let me just, give them the basics, stay on the top of things. And then one day God was like, listen, you have to tell the whole story because there's someone out there who needs the whole story. So one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to lay it all out there. Told my entire story. And so many people are like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. So, and that was healing for me because I was still kind of hiding, a part of me that I was embarrassed about. And so therapy can also help you get through. I just went through mine kind of in a public space, but also when I go to therapy, I just have to. Sometimes you'll go to therapy and just cry the whole time. I went to a session, I just literally just cried the entire time. I couldn't even talk. The therapist was asking me questions. I was just like bawling, just ugly cry throughout the entire session. So when you go to therapy, you have to be very transparent. And with our community, it's more like we don't talk about that. It's just what happened. move on with your life. And we can't do that anymore. So I think that's why we kind of veer away from therapy, because we don't want people knowing the truth, our true self, what's deep inside. Those things that we're embarrassed about, whether it's something that you did or something that happened to you. We just don't like to reveal that. But I'm glad we're at a point, and especially in our generation, where we're just like, you know what, forget that. I'm about to go to therapy. I need this healing. I want to do better personally. And I can't do that if I'm hiding all this stuff and suppressing all these emotions and these memories.
Mm, right. You're totally right on so many things. And that's another thing too with therapy. And I know in our community, that's just the thing. Well, you're not supposed to talk about this. Get over it. Don't tell our business.
What stays in the house, whatever happens in the house stays in the house. Don't tell everybody my business.
Grew up in that environment. So then it's like, okay, so I get this therapist. How many, what level of truth am I going to do with this therapist? Am I going to tell them everything? Like you said, just basic. So I think sometimes when you take the baby step when you come from that don't tell our business environment, to pull off the pen and say, okay, I am going to try therapy. But then once you start the therapy, it's like, okay, let me decide, how much I'm really going to tell. Also, I think it's a huge step doing therapy. Okay, number one, because you are discussing certain things that is like you technically don't want to talk about, but you got to talk about it to get the treatment. So it takes a lot of bravery and strength, to do therapy. But I always recommend it to people because I feel like therapy should be just similar as getting your daily, your routine checkups with the dentist, your physicals. I just think that your mental health should be something that, people, if they don't want to have regular therapy, it's good to check in and just to get out all your distressors and just learn how to navigate certain things, because life is hard and some people can navigate some of the twists and turns life takes easier than others. And there's nothing wrong with seeking help. And I just wish people who have had reservations about therapy would give it a chance, because I think they would be happy. They would see the difference. So I do appreciate that too. So,
yeah. And to just piggyback off of that, people think, okay, so there's therapy, and some people say, oh, I'll just do life coaching. Life coaching is not therapy, people. Life coaching is to help you with a specific issue, about your goals, about where you're trying to go from point A to point B. It's not therapy. I do have a background in Christian counseling. And so when I'm doing life coaching, I'm like, oh, this seems a little bit too much like therapy. Let me recommend a therapist to you, because this isn't like, I'm not licensed yet. So this isn't there. You need to talk to a therapist or a counselor. And then we can still work on your goal on this side. So a lot of people think, well, let me just take the shortcut and do life coaching. Life coaching is just for specific things around your goal.
Right. And I'm glad you said that too, because, there are some people who have labeled themselves life coaches without any type of training, and someone who really needs some serious help is going to these individuals. And you're right. And like I said, I'm not knocking life coaching at all. It's great. But I'm happy that you distinguish the difference. Some things are just something that you should speak to a therapist. And you're right. Life coaching is more specific to goals. And they're both great, but therapy is something that is totally different. So I thank you so much for breaking out
And sometimes I think it's a healthy selfishness to take care of yourself, because if you're down, then how can you help someone else? So it's a thing back to balance in my life that I have to continue to struggle with and work with, because we as women, we're kind of naturally caregivers. We're the one that takes care of the birth of the child and the nursing, and that's just in us. So when you're struggling with self-care and trying to earn a living and putting food on the table and looking out for your children, looking out for your husband, looking out for your home, it's a challenge.
For breaking out the difference. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about, one of the taglines that I found when looking through your information was, be the catalyst to the change you desire to see within yourself. So with the platform of the Key Chat, of course, the big conversation as well is self-love. I do feel self-love is the fuel to care for ourselves, to love ourselves, to value ourselves, which is important to our mental health, because when you're dealing with a lot of problems, that's the whole thing. Sometimes we really don't see the value or the beauty in ourselves, and dealing with stress and just feeling sometimes that we don't belong here, we don't want to be alive anymore, just having that hurt and pain. But self-love really is valuing yourself, realizing that you do have a voice, and it may hurt, but it can be okay. It's okay to seek help. You have to have a level of loving yourself in order to seek help. So what role has self-love played in your life, and what role has self-love played just in your journey with mental health, your platform, helping people? What is your journey with self-love, and what has it meant to you?
So self-love in my journey has been accepting that sometimes I'm not okay. And really just accepting that. So if I don't feel like it, Dani, that's okay. Being kind to yourself, not being so hard on yourself. I don't believe like what they call tough love. Love is not supposed to be tough. It's supposed to be love. It's supposed to be uplifting and kind and patient. And you have to have those things for yourself. Sometimes we exclude ourselves from those things, being patient with ourselves, being kind to ourselves. Before I actually asked for help, I was very rough on myself. Dani, get it together. Get it together without, trying to understand why I'm feeling this way. I had low self-esteem. I always talked down to myself. I was one of those people, if you would have known me in high school, you would have to beat me into, a skirt or a dress. I did cheerleading to kind of come out of that, but at the same time, I was very self-conscious. My self-image was super low. My self-esteem was low as well. So just building myself up over the years, being kind to myself, teaching other people to be kind to themselves too. Yeah, you probably did mess up, but accept that. How do you feel about this? What can you do to, get through this problem without beating yourself up even more? People are going to make mistakes. It's okay. That's human. People are going to, slip up and lash out with their emotions. But you have to realize, okay, this is what happened. How can I combat that? And don't put your emotions on the back burner. I did that a lot. Okay, I'm angry right now, but I'll revisit it, tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, and I never acknowledge it. Then the next day comes, and then you find yourself in the same situation, and you're reacting the same way. So self-love also includes embracing and acknowledging your emotions and walking yourself through it in that moment versus trying to, do it at a later date and you forget. The more you do that, so now I can walk myself through my emotions really quick and keep on going that same day or within the same breath. And like I said, it all circles back to being mindful. Self-love is self-care. It's being mindful of yourself. It's being kind to yourself, and accepting of yourself as well.
Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate this conversation. Like I said, I'm so happy that women like yourself are just being, like I said, bringing these issues that we all need to talk about to the spotlight. I know regarding mental health has grown, but again, there's always more room to have these conversations, because just that one person who will tune in or see you at a show, it could save a life, most definitely. So I thank you so much for your mission, and I do appreciate this conversation. But before we end everything, tell everybody how they can find you, how they can seek you out and learn more about you.
Okay, so if you want to connect with me, you can do so on IG at IM_Dani Parks. On the Facebook, I'm Dani Parks Speaks. Or if my profile pops up, Dani Parks, you can send me a friend request. And then my website is www.imdaniparks.com. Twitter, IM_Dani Parks as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for everything. And guys, remember that your mental health is something that's super important. It's okay to not be okay. And I know we live in a world where we push positivity. I know I talk about being positive all the time, but again, it's okay to own your feelings. It's okay to not be okay. And that's something to always remember, and don't feel ashamed about your feelings. And it's okay to get help always, because you're worth it. And you deserve to be here, but you deserve to be here and be happy and be healthy and be whole. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Key Chat. And again, whatever help that you need, there's so many resources. Seek out. Don't be ashamed or afraid to reach out to someone and say, I need help. So thank you guys again. Be safe and be sure you go love yourself.
Deli must have did this beat.